Many beginner artists attempting to draw landscapes run into a lot of the same issues that, if left unaddressed, will leave their drawings with a flat, messy, and overworked feeling. Luckily, once you learn about these 5 common drawing issues, they can be fixed with intentional practice. At the end of this video, I will share one step I do before making any kind of art, whether it's a drawing, a watercolor painting, or an oil painting, that greatly improves the final result. So stick around. To illustrate these 5 common mistakes and how to fix them, I'll draw the same landscape scene twice, once with a beginner level mindset, and once to demonstrate how to combat these issues. When we see an object, often our first instinct is to seek to describe it quickly and simply, but without the right technique, we revert to a childlike habit of outlining, when trees were drawn with little more than a circle for the foliage and a rectangle for the trunk. This oversimplification leaves a drawing feeling flat and uninteresting. We can try to draw trees and foliage better by better understanding their true forms. Trees are never as solid or consistently dense as the childlike bubble trees make them seem. Their leaves face us head-on, sideways, and twist in the wind. Their branches peek through more or less depending on the density of the leaves on a branch. Their irregular contours unpredictably catch sunlight and cast shadows. The edges of trees should never be drawn with continuous nor consistent lines. The harder a line or an edge is, the more solid the object it is describing will seem. Use light, fluttering, and broken marks to describe the borders of foliage. Use some larger marks and some smaller marks, but don't attempt to draw every leaf you see, especially if the tree is far away. A quick way to create a flat, messy, and confusing drawing is to include every detail that you can see in a reference photo. Detail and information is good and should be included in the foreground, but in the midground and background, our reference photos hinder us. The camera does too good of a job. Our photos show us too much detail. To represent things at a distance in our drawings, we must include less detail. We should not be able to see the same amount of detail in a tree that's hundreds of feet away as in a tree or bush that's 10 feet away. The same amount of detail will register as the same distance, and our drawings will feel flat. We also want to omit detail in some areas so our eyes know where to go in a given drawing. If everything is detailed and interesting to look at, our minds will become overwhelmed and the drawing won't capture our attention in the way we want it to. If you're finding this interesting, please hit the like button. It helps my channel and helps me know if I'm making useful content for you. Our third drawing mistake is to stay 100% true to your reference photo. Similar to our last point, sometimes including every tree, every bush, or every cloud can detract from our overall drawing. Sometimes less really is more, and we should always strive for clarity over complete accuracy. If there is a distracting bush in the foreground, omit it. If there are trees in the background that would confuse the layers as they recede back into space, leave them out. If your drawing is complex and you need a calm area to balance that out, leave out the clouds in your sky or the plants cluttering a waterway. As the artist, it's your job to create the final scene, not the cameras or the photos. Another way to create a sense of distance and 3 dimensions in our drawing is to vary our line thickness or line weight. Thicker, heavier lines should almost exclusively be used in the foreground, midweight lines for the midground, and of course light lines for the background. If varying the pressure you apply your pen to the paper is too difficult, you can use pens of different sizes. Use a pen with a 0.3 mm tip for the foreground, 0.2 mm for the midground, and a 0.1 or 0.05 mm for the background. If you only have one pen or pens of the same size, practice varying your line weight as a pre-drawing exercise. Start with heavy pressure as you start a line and taper your line with a light touch. Practice the opposite as well. Start with a thin line and a light touch, and end with heavier pressure and a thicker line. This last drawing tip I think is the most important and I believe the most overlooked by beginners, and that is to include areas of different values. When nearing the end of a drawing, my last step is always to look at the shadows in my reference photo and evaluate if I've achieved the same amount of darkness or contrast in my drawing. Often I will add more hatching in at least one or two areas. By controlling our detail, we preserve areas of light value, and then we can see if we need to go darker in any other areas. If we skip this, we can end up with drawings with only a few value steps, which tend to be flatter with a more consistent middle gray average. We want to make sure we have areas of pure white, untouched paper, areas with lots of ink that are nearly black, and preferably 2 or 3 degrees of gray in between. Adding a black and white filter onto your reference photo is a good way to see which areas need to be the most dark and the most light. Now, onto my top tip. My greatest piece of advice to beginner artists of any medium is to pre-plan your work. Before you put your pen to paper or your brush onto a canvas, have a mental image formed in your mind of what you want your drawing to look like, and write out a list of characteristics that different areas of your drawing should include. This way, you aren't going into your drawing blindly, hoping that you guess correctly where to put the marks you're going to make. I like to think of any drawing I'm about to create as if it were a puzzle. For my pre-planning, I think about each piece, each distinct area or layer of my drawing, and I jot down some characteristics that define it, and I include techniques that will help me achieve those characteristics, such as a light touch, a feathered edge, or more or less detail. For this drawing, I thought about 7 distinct puzzle pieces: the water, the bush in the foreground, the lines of bushes in the midground, the trees in the midground, the trees in the background, the bluff in the background, and the sky. I thought about the direction of hatching, quality of edges, amount of detail, and amount of value. I thought some of the most important notes were to keep the hatching in the water horizontal, to have the bush in the foreground to be the place with the most detail, to keep the midground bush on the left the lightest value, to make the shadows in both tree areas very dark, and to keep the bluff very light and plain to show that while the other layers of bushes and trees are farther back from each other, the bluff is much more distant. Let's compare the two finished drawings side by side. This first one is confusing and messy. I can hardly tell what we're trying to depict here. The outlining and same-sized marks and detail make everything feel like they are on the same plane. It makes the drawing feel flat. Our second drawing has clarity and simplicity, depth and interest. The bushes and trees have a three-dimensional feeling to them. You can tell which areas are in sunlight and which areas are in shadow. I certainly know which one I prefer. If you draw with intention and forethought, you practice often, and you study what goes right and wrong in your drawings, your improvement will be inevitable. If you liked this video or found it interesting, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll be putting out new drawing or painting videos soon. Thank you for watching, and have fun drawing!